how do you feel like a person like that has worked, she kind of trained the dog in certain aspects, so she kind of had her own way of doing things. Do you find that helpful or kind of problematic when you take a dog and you're teaching it, and then when you like maybe send home, do you find like resistance because she was doing things certain ways, or is it actually helpful because she kind of knew her way around the dog?
Both.
Okay.
Depends on the situation, right? So in her case, it was extremely helpful because she was trying and doing all of these things, not with the mentality of I know everything, but I'm trying to provide for this dog, right? And improve his skills and, make him better with these types of things. But she realized the limitations of the things that she was trying. Yeah. Right? But because she was very active with him and she kind of understood how stuff worked, once I gave her the new instructions of how to do them, because she already understood how to work with him, she worked with him in a very clear and concise way over the course of me teaching her these new skills. Yeah. Right. So that was definitely a beneficial side of things. I will say that if you're going into situations where you're working with clients who have done other training before, right, or have worked with the dog extensively and maybe actually done relatively good work that's unrelated to the problem that they're having, it takes a very good trainer to be able to educate that person on you have to be very careful not to like insult them and make it seem like you screwed everything up or those things are stupid that you worked on or this or that. You've got to educate them on just how those things are unrelated. So in her case, like I said, like she did a lot of training with him, and she even gave me, when I picked up the dog for the board and train, this list of commands, right? She's like, he knows this, and this is his walking command, and this is this, and this is that, and this is that, right? And we basically took that list and like threw it out the window, right? Like, not that again, any of those things were bad by any means, but like we had a different way that we were going to structure out all of those things that was going to be more simple and more directly correlated to her problem. And that was one of the biggest things in the send home lesson right off the rip, is I explained to her, like when we got into the leash walking, right? She's like, oh, so you guys don't use foos anymore for that, because that's what she was kind of using for her heel. And I had to do a good job of explaining the foos is not wrong. The foos is not bad, right? You could still work on those types of things with him, but those are like a separate thing from how we're handling it right now. And then on top of that, I had to elaborate and explain on and get her to understand why this way of doing things is just a little bit more conducive to the results that she's looking for. Yeah. So a little bit of both. I will say that sometimes it could shoot you in the foot. Like that phone call I did. So I did a phone call right before we got on this podcast, right, with a lady who was calling in regards to training for her mother's dog. Right? Her mother has a 5-year-old working line, Czech imported German Shepherd, whatever. Her mother is also like 80. She said like 82 or 84 or something like that, right? So she's a little older, right? And she said that her mom for 30 years was a Schutzhund trainer, right? So Schutzhund is obviously a old German protection sport that now is kind of IGP, but whatever, right? So which is great, right? Like, listen, I've all respect in the world for people that have done stuff like that, for a while, right? But the problem is, they're having a lot of problems with this dog, obviously, right? This dog is clearly a little bit outside of their pay grade as far as their knowledge of things. And past that, I don't know anything about, their physical health that they're in and stuff like that. But this dog is probably a hell of a lot stronger than some of their other dogs they've had. And tack onto that, they're probably a heck of a lot weaker than they used to be, right? That's not a bash on them by any means, but like that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. As you get older, that's a lot of dog to handle. It's a lot of dog to handle for somebody myself, like a young buck like myself, right? So they're having a lot of issues, and one of the big things that she had said was because her mom had trained Schutzhund for so long with dogs, she is pretty opposed to this idea of doing training, right? Which we hear a lot, right? And we hear it on even a more minor scale, right? Where we'll get people that come in who have maybe owned 9 dogs before in their life, right? 50, 60-year-old person, something like that, right? And those 9 dogs they've had their whole life, whether they were easy dogs or moderately difficult dogs, and they did an okay job of managing and training those dogs on their own, right? They have a hard time letting go of those ways because they don't view it as an educational issue on their end. They view it as a dog issue, right? I know what I'm doing. But this dog just isn't getting it. This dog is too stupid to get it or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Which we obviously know is not the case, right? A lot of times there's just some dogs that exceed the difficulty level of some of the dogs that you may have worked with on your own.
Yep.
Right? And ironically, it's funny how our topics kind of align a little bit. The staff just did a podcast the other day on something very similar to that. I think they called it like, don't lose the student mentality ever. You know what I mean? And even as trainers, we have to check ourselves on that sometimes, because I think sometimes owners, after they've owned a couple easy dogs, will lose the student mentality.
Yeah.
Right? They have a hard time admitting that they don't know how to handle this situation. Right? They think that just there's something wrong with the dog. The dog is broken because it's not responding to the things that I've done with all of my other dogs. Right?
Yeah.
And that's such a weird shift that people have a hard time getting themselves out of sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Long-winded answer to your question there.
No, that's good, though. But did you still use some of the words that they were using prior in your training?
I mean, so they wanted to do like German commands and stuff like that, which whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. We get people that come in that want to do different languages and stuff. So we did that. And it's less about the words, right?
Yeah.
Words aren't so important, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the meaning of the words that are important. So
Yeah.
what we did with some of those words that they taught is we just shifted the meaning of them to be something a little bit different, a little bit more clear to the dog, and a little bit more easily enforced.
Yeah. But I think that's a great, I don't know, maybe compromise or caveat to like still implement kind of what they were doing, but so it's still easy for them because they were already using that kind of language.
Yeah.
But you just kind of repurpose the words to help the dog better.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to like kind of you still integrate that list that she had.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, we really just threw it out the window, but we just kind of like adhered it more to what the dog needed.
Yeah.
So I like that. Yeah, I always wondered about that, and I thought that was a really good one because it's like obviously she has a lot of care for the dog, and she was already kind of doing these things with him to try to help him out. So it's cool to see that you were able to like really work through that, and then kind of just come together and find a great middle ground for them to continue working with that dog.
Yeah, and still a little bit of work to do, obviously. We're kind of going through their training side of things. The dog is doing very well. Like I said, I just saw him again yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's crushing it. I mean, they haven't really been having any issues with anything, but I still like to make sure that I get enough education into the owner. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that
for
they
sure.
can kind of follow through long term with this kind of stuff. And like I said, they're both very committed, very motivated to work with the dog. So it's looking really good.